I'm so happy to see you. And I want to hear about all of these wonderful things that I missed out on this week. I missed out on them because I went in for my second eye surgery. They put me on heart monitors. My heart went crazy. So I spent 3 days in the hospital, and it's just one of those things, folks. I'm asymptomatic, and I'm glad to know because I never felt anything. That's just how life is. So I miss all of the wonderful protests that you guys went to this week, and I want to hear about them. Okay, I have a couple of announcements. I have written to 7 people in my district. I went to Eddie Davenport, who's the head of the Hamilton County Democratic Party, and he helped me make out a list of the active Democrats. I got all of the active Democrats in my precinct. I called every single one of them, and I got 7 of them who are interested in working on the campaigns with me. So I wrote a letter, a long letter, telling them about all my plans. You come on over for cookies, and when I get back after this week, I will be in contact with them. So I'm really proud about that. If you haven't seen my letter from my daughter, I have to tell you, I'm still kind of in the ways of being grateful to her because, you know, it's sometimes really nice when your kids do things that is really nice for everybody. So she sent me a copy of a newspaper article that was about the work that she's heading. It was on the front page of the Herald Tribune in San Diego. So she is she's trying to cure racism with conversation. So she meets these big groups of people, and they talk about their issues. And anyway, it seems to be working, and people seem to be happy with it. And it's my daughter's job to do that, and I'm really proud of her. So, if you can. I should also say that a couple of years ago, my son got a special prize for making the internet 3/1 millionths of a second faster. Yeah, I'm sorry, you're all impressed, so there you go. They're both good in their very different ways. Very different ways. So a couple of announcements that I have. I have this article. Where is Evanston? Anybody know where Evanston is? The neighborhood. The neighborhood. They're going to have a community council meeting, and I have been invited to go. And I'm assuming that means you too. So wherever Evanston is, if you're a part of Evanston, you need to go to this meeting on August 15th. And this one is from Denise Streethouse. She is currently one of our county commissioners. And she's big enough for that. Is going to be running again, I guess. And she wants you to walk at the Black Family Reunion, which is, I can't read because I can't have my next eye surgery. Saturday is 17th. Thank you. She's helping out already. We're trying to get, here our people come. Okay, so those are my announcements. There are more announcements, but Peter's got hold of them so far. So I'm going to go and ask for more announcements.
Over here on the table, we have this vivid green flyer. It's about building power for education justice. It's an organizing training that's going to be on September 14th. It will be at the Laborers Hall, Thomas War Hall, right there on Montgomery Road as it comes into Duck Creek. Our trainers will be Jonathan Rodriguez, who's the senior organizer for the American Federation of Teachers, Trig Turner with the Cincinnati NAACP, and Neil Brayman, who's communications director of OFT. This will be a way that you can learn how to organize, and we do that pretty well here, but in each and every one of your individual groups, how you start what we call our snowflakes. Now, that's a very positive thing. You've got a core person who reaches out to numerous people. That becomes their snowflake. They reach out to other people, and they have another snowflake, and another snowflake. So this is your organizing method. Because what we have learned, in order for us to be successful, it takes me reaching out personally to someone else and inviting them to come and join us. And that's the most powerful organizing tool that we have found, is the ask, the personal ask. So these flyers are over the table, September 14th. Please come and join us.
Okay, now I want to hear about some of these other things. Charmaine.
I just wanted to announce that Steve Shabbat was supposed to be having a town hall on Thursday, and he canceled. And I don't know why, and I don't know what made me think I need to call to check on this. But yes, he canceled the meeting, so supposedly he's going to reschedule in the fall. And I do not have any information on any other meetings that have been scheduled.
I thought he was shameless when he
He crawled back underneath the rock.
Did he know that people were going to be there?
Hi, insurance.
Okay.
My friend called, and of course they said, oh, we don't know anything about that. Like, of course they did. But also, the lady who works at his office, she says, we're not even allowed to find out when his town halls are until the day before. People who work in his office.
The demonstration Saturday outside his office, there were a good 30 people, and two of the candidates who are running against Shabbat had good speeches. It was nice to get a start on the whole process, but he really should be ashamed to show his face.
I want to hear about this hands across. Somebody want to tell me about the hands across?
Mike.
It was very hot. There were probably 500 people there. We were across the 8th Street Viaduct. And a lot of the focus was African American mothers whose sons have been killed. And the only thing I don't understand is I think when we have these, we should go somewhere where we're seen. Hardly anybody saw us. You know, Fountain Square at 4 o'clock or whatever, so we can be seen. But it was really cool. It's just great to be around people who are like-minded. The police took good care of us. They were there. Charlotte.
Yes, I was there. I was there for the Enough is Enough rally and the Hands Across the Bridge. And I have to tell you, it was so inspiring, particularly when I looked down the road on either side and we were all holding hands and we were spanned across that bridge. And I can't tell you the number of cars that went by and people that just gave us the thumbs up. It was a very, very popular rally, and I thought the people that spoke were so passionate, and it's a real cause, and it's something that we all need to get behind. So, thank you.
Any other protests that I missed with my 3 days in other places? Okay, more is coming up, but we have Marlena, right? Marlene is going to tell us about this week.
Let me do mine first while I got the mic. I put on the tables, I'm having a wine tasting at my house for the Hamilton County municipal judges that have opposition this Sunday, and I'd like to invite you all. And if you'll please RSVP, it'll be help to know how much wine to buy.
Which one?
Marlena.
Feel like I need a wine tasting right now. So, you will hear about the Black Family Reunion Parade from everyone that's running. I'm no exception. So pretty much whoever you feel like walking with, just show up and they'll probably give you a shirt. On Wednesday at 6 p.m., Gamble Montessori High School is having a community open house. So they've done the remodeling. It's no longer Mother of Mercy. It is Gamble Montessori High School, and it will open next week. So everyone's welcome to attend and take a tour. That's at 6 p.m. on Wednesday. Yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow's Wednesday. And the address is 3036 Work Road. The 21st, which is next Wednesday, Westside Dems is meeting, and we are also having a judges' night. I know that Erica Underwood is confirmed, and I think Tyrone Yates. Not sure about the others yet, but everyone's welcome to attend that as well. That's all I've got today.
Marlena is running for school board. She's really good. We gotta make sure she's out there. And any other announcements? Are we almost there? Are we almost there? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to present to you Charmaine McGuffy. She is running for the Hamilton County Sheriff, and she's going to tell us all about it. She's really good.
Okay, there we go. I'm Charmaine McGuffy. I'm running for Sheriff of Hamilton County. I'm standing here before you because 2 years ago, I was asked to support something that I absolutely did not believe in. And that thing was the practice of not holding officers accountable for excessive use of force in the jail. I was told, be quiet. I was told to stay in my lane. I was told to go with the flow. I was faced with one of the most dynamic situations of my career, the most difficult decision of my career, and I did not stay quiet. I did not go with the flow, and it cost me my job. As many of you have experienced, I'm certain in life, those moments when you have to take an account of your values and your ethics and stand on what you believe in, I had to make that decision. And while it was a hard decision to make, I will tell you it was a very easy decision for me to make. And I'd like to explain to you how I got here, how I got to that decision in my career. I grew up in Price Hill with a single mom. I had 2 sisters, and my mom worked very hard to support us. When my sisters and I got up for school in the morning, Mom was at work. And when we got home from school, Mom was still at work. My mom worked very hard, and I tell you, we were poor, but we didn't know it. My mom instilled in us a hard work value, an integrity value, and I watched my entire life my mom treat every person she ever encountered with respect. And I learned from that, but also the community helped raise me. Cincinnati Recreation provided me with activities, and they even gave me my very first job at 14. And, I went to Western Hills High School, and the teachers at Western Hills High School took an interest in me, and some of them mentored me and allowed me to know what was possible for my future. But, it wasn't always smooth sailing. So when I was 14, I told my uncle, who was a former Cincinnati police officer, he had been retired. And I said to him, hey, my mic's on. And I said, so I said to him, I want to become a police officer. And he looked at me and he said to me, well, I'll tell you this. Women can't be cops and cops can't be women. And that's the way I got it, right? So, I respect my uncle, I love my uncle, but I can tell you this, right then there at that moment, I knew that I was going to make it happen. I didn't know how I was going to make it happen, but I was going to do it. And I did do it. I went to the University of Cincinnati. I got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I joined the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, where I spent 33 years. 33 years in the Sheriff's Office. I achieved rank in the Sheriff's Office, all the way up to the highest ranking woman in the Sheriff's Office history, which was Major of Jail and Court Services. I spent 5 years in that position, and I tell you, during my career in the Sheriff's Office, I've worked in nearly every facet of the sheriff's office. I loved my job. I loved every job I ever had in uniform, and that's evidenced by the fact that I have over 100 commendations that I've received during my career. But the most important thing that I want you to know about me is that I am a true reformer. I am a person who believes in justice, who believes that we can do better, and I believe that when we do better, when our justice system does better, we can expect the people that are caught in our justice system to do better. And I know that that can happen. Now, I came up in a system where, you know, some of you probably remember the name Simon Lease.
Oh, yeah.
I worked for him for 26 years, all right? I know that we had a hard incarceration model, and I'd like to tell people what that meant, because I witnessed it, I lived it, I worked it. People would come to jail, and they would be incarcerated for periods of time with almost nothing to do while they are in jail. And we take their money, we confiscate their car, we sever their ties with their families, we take a lot of things out of their life, and then when we release them out the door, we say, now, go out there and do better with less. And that never made sense to me, because we know what happens when you treat people in that manner. So when I took over as Major of Jail and Court Services, I knew what I wanted to do, and I accelerated. Our change. I was a change agent. So we were rated the worst jail in the state of Ohio. Hamilton County Justice Center, by the way, is the third largest jail in the state of Ohio, and we were rated the worst jail in the state of Ohio when I took over in 2013. Under my leadership, our jail became the best jail in the state of Ohio, and we were all very proud of that. And that wasn't just me working at it. Certainly that was supervisors and officers. We all wanted that status. Nobody wants to be seen in that light. So in doing so, I will tell you that I heard the word can't during my career and during my lifetime, really, more than I heard the word could. But you know, in reality, what kept me going is understanding and knowing that we can change this system. I am running not to oppose any one person, all right? I am running to bring fresh ideas and a new plan to the Sheriff's Office. And that plan is accountability, reform, and community engagement. When you have a law enforcement agency that's accountable, you have complete transparency, which means our police officers feel safe in enforcing the laws in our neighborhood. That's certainly super important. But also our citizens feel that they will be treated fairly and equally by every officer they encounter, and the justice system as well. Our budget needs to be one that our taxpayers can see it and understand what's prioritized, what we're spending our money on, and what we're not spending our money on, and maybe what we should spend our money on. I will note to you that my opponent has been $2 million over budget, 1 year $4 million over budget since my opponent took over. And I tell you, the budget is something that needs to be managed and managed well, because the Sheriff's Office budget also affects everybody else's budget. It affects Jobs and Family Services budget. It affects the budget of the prosecutor's office, the public defender's office, because there's one pool of money, and we have to all share it. So we have to do those, we have to use taxpayer money responsibly. And that's a part of accountability, is letting you know that that's being done. When I talk about justice reform, I want to say this. I know, and you know, that there are people who need to be incarcerated. Some of them for the rest of their lives. I've met them. And that is absolute true fact. But I also know from my years in the business, there are many people who are languishing in our jails and prisons who have embraced rehabilitation, who are ready to come back to their community. And those people need to do that, because we then will create a system that is more just than it is unjust. And reform, I tell you, people think, oh gosh, if we do reform, it's going to be so expensive. It's going to be, we're going to spend a lot of money. I can tell you that justice is inexpensive. Injustice is expensive. And I'll explain to you why. Thank you. I brought in the reforms in the jail when I took over, the women's heroin recovery pod. And that was a way to capture those women who are addicted and bring them into the jail and into services. And I don't just mean counseling. I mean, here's how you write your resume. Here's how you get an ID. Here's how you take care of your children. Here's how you contact Jobs and Family Services. All the things that you need to manage your life when you get out of jail. The other thing that was very significant was peer mentoring, and that's key. I had to change policies to get peer mentors into that jail. You know why? Because many peer mentors have felonies on their records, and we weren't allowing them into the jail. We weren't allowing them to interact with prisoners. So we had to change those policies. I created the Men's Veteran Recovery Pod, and that pod, again, was the same concept, but for men who've been in the military, who are experiencing like PTSD symptoms and things like that. The Men's Exit Pod, which teaches men who are 6 months or less on their sentence, here's where you go to get your driver's license, here's how you pay your child support, here's how those are things people need when they walk out that door. And we have a captured audience. I'll say it in that way, no pun intended. We have an audience. And I found that the people that are incarcerated embrace that kind of opportunity. They do. Now some don't. Okay, I'll be very realistic with you. But the people that don't embrace that opportunity, I tell you what happens is they tend to come back. And when they do, we're going to give them another opportunity. And we're going to keep giving them opportunities. And that's criminal justice reform. Community engagement certainly means that we do this. That your leader of your law enforcement agency, your leader, okay, is out there talking to people and engaging and listening and hearing what people want to know, what questions they have. It's so very important. I will community engage just as I did as the major. I'll community engage with county commissioners, the city, the public, everyone. I think that's so important. I will tell you this, in my 33-year career, I have witnessed justice and I've witnessed injustice. And one day, years ago, I was walking down the hall and I encountered this young man who was seated on a bench. And he was a prisoner and he was being transported somewhere, right? And so as I got close to him, I said, "Good morning, sir, how are you?" And you know how he responded to me? He looked at me and he said, "You know what? I have been in this jail for a week and a half, and you are the very first person to treat me with respect, and I want to thank you for that." Those were his exact words. And I tell you why I remembered it, because I learned a very important lesson that day, right? About humanity and dignity, and what jail can mean to people, and what it does to people who are incarcerated. It can be a place that's just devoid of hope. And, it's not to say that we don't have excellent officers, because we do. I know that. I used to run the training academy. For years, I was the person who trained our officers to be empathetic, to talk, to use skills before we go banging somebody's head into a wall, right? So, when I talk about running for sheriff and the things that I want to do as sheriff, it is going to be a transformation that makes our sheriff's office one of the best in the state, if not the nation. And I am going to embrace it because I've already seen it in action. I've already been doing it. I created a RAP committee, and all I did when I started as major, all I did is put word of mouth out. I brought people to the table And I said, hey, you represent this agency. Hey, you know so-and-so, you do this, you do that. Go out and find out who wants to come in and help us. That's all I did. And it reached out to all these people, and I had packed meetings. I did it once a week for a solid year. I connected with 50 different agencies. And I tell you, one of the things that I'm so proud of creating that is no longer there since I left, and that is we created a women's book club for general population women, right? And the way that we did that was 2 volunteers who were occupational therapists from UC Hospital came down, and the library donated the books. That's community engagement, and it didn't cost us a dime. And in fact, all of the things I just said to you, all the things that I created and that we did, the engagements, it didn't cost the taxpayers a dime. And I asked for money. Believe me, I thought I needed money. So I went over there and asked for it. And they said, no, we're going to give you money. So I said, you know, we've got to get it done anyway. And so it taught me a lesson of what's possible. And that's exactly why I need to run for sheriff. I am not opposing, as I said, any one person. I need my job, and I need that job, because that's the job. The sheriff's office influences law enforcement, corrections, and the courts. There is no bigger influencer in our criminal justice system than a sheriff's office, because we touch every entity of the criminal justice system. So I am asking for your support in that endeavor. Certainly I have a website, McGuffyforsheriff.com, and I am asking you, you know, if you know me and you meet me, one of the things you can do that doesn't cost you anything, of course I would like money, but doesn't cost you anything, is to go on and do what they call nowadays on Facebook and so forth is like a testimonial. It's like a endorsement, an endorsement of just normal, regular, everyday us, and tell people what you think. And doing that on my page would be welcomed, and thank you. So now what I'd like to do is just throw it out to questions, because I think people tend to have questions about our criminal justice system. Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever find out why the women's book club is no longer going on?
Sure, it's because it was not, I tell you why it's no longer going on, because administration did not support it. Those kinds of programs are new and change-oriented to that facility, and they have to be supported by administration, which means you have to change the officer's mind as well, right? Because the officers, as good as they are, they're still in that mindset. All we see is attorneys. We feed lunch at this time. We do laundry at this time. That's their mindset. And I don't blame them for it. We need to retrain them. The other program that is no longer in existence, well, there's a few since I left. Some are still there. They're not very well supported. Some just completely went away. Art for All People, which was a fabulous program. We were rolling that out to the men, you know, and it was you get a canvas, a flexible canvas with a picture on it, an outline, and you use watercolor paints and paintbrush, and you paint that picture as a group, and you talk about the inspirational message of that picture with a jail minister who is also an artist, right? And it's a 2-hour program that keeps those prisoners engaged in meaningful conversation. That program is no longer there because administration did not want to support it. And it hurts me in that way. And I will tell you this, there are people who say, well, wait a minute, whoa, why are we doing all this for people who have done bad things, who are incarcerated? I'll tell you why. Because criminal justice reform is now, it's here, it's not on the horizon. We are in the middle of it. And whether you are, whatever side of the aisle you're on, there is something in criminal justice reform for you. I guarantee you that. If you're concerned about your tax dollars and how we're going to spend them more wisely and stop this mass incarceration so that your tax dollars can go to something else you care about, right, that you want to support, it's for you. If you care about the way people are treated while they're in incarceration, it's for you. If you care about what the judges are doing and how these people are being overpunished, criminal justice reform is for you. So there's something on the table for everyone. So thanks for asking that question. Yes, ma'am.
I have the mic.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess I
Okay, I'm
know.
not quite sure where I'm going with this question, but it seems like there's always a push-pull between the city and the county in a lot of affairs. And do you see that between the two police forces, and how would you address that?
Okay, so that's a great question. You know, I don't see it as pronounced, and I'll tell you why. The city police department is engaged in pretty much the same endeavors that we are engaged in as the sheriff's office. We're law enforcement, and we all care about what happens in our community regarding law enforcement. The way that Cincinnati PD interacts with us the most is when they bring prisoners to the jail. That's where Cincinnati PD intersects with us. Now, also, Cincinnati has joined with us on our heroin task force. They've joined with us with RENEW, which is our regional narcotics unit. So we work together actually very well. Since, you know, you're always going to have your, I call them turf wars maybe, I don't know, where you're going to have people of kingdom, you know, nobody wants to give up control in their kingdom. But in general, I will tell you, Cincinnati, I know many people in Cincinnati that I just consider completely professional and great people. So we work together very well. We do.
I have a question. I'm a volunteer now doing court watch with the League of Women Voters in Mark, and I've had my first day in municipal court. That was an eye-opener. But one of the things that I noticed is if somebody has automatic incarceration, they immediately put them in handcuffs and take them off. But when they bring in the people that are in jail in their attire and are handcuffed, when the case is dismissed, they do not take off the handcuffs.
Right.
And it seems to me they're no longer a threat. They're not going to run away in those clothes. Why they can't take off those handcuffs?
You know, it's an excellent question, and it's exactly why we need community engagement. Because I have to be honest with you, in my entire career, I've never considered that question. I've never considered that. But you're exactly right. If we've exonerated someone, if we've said dismissed, why are they still, now part of it, they still have to remain in custody. The cuffs could come off reasonably, but for them to come back with us is to process that. So we do have an administrative process that must be done and property and so forth, but you're exactly right. I'm glad you asked that, you know.
Who should I call about it?
Well, I think what you should do is, I think you should contact the judge of that courtroom through the bailiff. Typically the bailiff will communicate to the judge and ask the question and see what answer you get. And here's the thing that I know about community engagement. You may not get an answer the first time, and you just have to keep asking. And you ask and ask and ask. And that's what I did. I used to have to call the judges to try and manage my jail population, right? Because we're so overcrowded down there. And I would call judges and say, hey, will you help us out? Can we do this? Can we do that? And sometimes the judges would say, no. And sometimes they would cooperate. And sometimes they would eventually do it because they wanted me to stop calling them. So, you know, so that kind of thing could happen, yes.
I have two parts. When you become sheriff, will
Yes.
you please increase highway safety? I am so afraid of driving. You know, people are passing me on their right going 80. There's no police enforcement anymore on the highways. It's like they've been vacated. It's so scary. Second thing, Dick Bozian and I have been doing Smart Recovery for years. It's a free addiction recovery program. We are in the federal prisons, Clear Mountain County. We've been trying for 20 years to get into our county jail to do a free program, and we get no response whatsoever. It's like everything's 12-step, I guess. So it's a cognitive therapy thing that works very well, and we have volunteers who go in there and help people.
And I promise you this, when I become sheriff, you'll be in that facility. Because that's exactly what we embrace. promise you. We'll work to get you in there. And part of the reason why you're probably not in there is not that your program isn't excellent or that you're doing great things. It's because somebody doesn't want to do the hard work of getting things moved around and situated so that you can come into that facility and do what you need to do. I mean, realistically, we have more policies than you can count, right? And they're all there for reasons, we know that, good reasons. But sometimes policies need to be changed, just like the peer mentoring. That's what it reminds me of. We didn't have peer mentoring in our jail because, oh, well, the policy says this. Well, you know what? As far as I know, this is 2019. We can change that 1960s policy. So, yeah, so you're well, thank you for that question. That's my answer. Yes, ma'am. Sure. Oh, yes.
A practical question. I've heard that paper products for women are non-existent in the jails. Is that still true in Hamilton County?
Well, I will tell you, they're existent. They're there. When women need particularly hygiene products, they need to ask for them, okay? And then those products are provided. I think that we could do a better job of having that be more of a self-service kind of thing. I think, again, you know, when you have to ask for something very basic and someone can say yes or no, then you're going to have issues with that. So it is something that we would, consider. But they are available. But I will tell you that that is something that concerns women in our jail. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Yes, I actually live in Butler County, so I can't vote for you, I'm sorry.
Well,
I live in Westchester. We have our own police force, and Fairfield has theirs, and
yes.
the county police and everything. Hamilton County must have countless numbers of police organizations. It seems so redundant to have all of that extra administration for all those police forces in the entire county.
Yeah, you're right. It's redundant in a lot of ways. It does overlap. Maybe I'll put it that way. I know that when we created those contracts, because we took over Silverton, we took over Lincoln Heights, Arlington Heights. There are different municipalities that we have come in and contracted for our police services. And what I'm hearing is just kind of what you say. The neighborhood people are now, the administrators there are pushing back because they feel they've lost control. And they feel like it is just exactly that, a layer. And my answer to that is, again, here's transparency. The leaders need to get out there and address that issue. The leaders do. You should be hearing from the chief deputy, the major, the sheriff. Those people should be addressing that issue and telling you what they think about it and what it is.
And on the outside chance that you don't win, will you please come up to Butler County and run against Sheriff Jones?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes.
Does law enforcement have any potential, any interest to influence the laws that allow assault rifles to be in the hands of everybody?
I can tell you that I'm against it.
Yeah, but I mean, is there any interest among law enforcement to organize a huge campaign to influence the change in those laws so that we can eliminate this ridiculous number of assault weapons?
I can tell you that my opponent, the current sheriff, Jim Neal, is endorsed by the Buckeye State Firearms Association, which is an arm of the NRA. He's endorsed by them. You know, I'm dying for somebody to ask him that question. It comes from your leadership, is what it does, right? When the leader of your organization says, hey, who's with me? Let's go. You're going to get that kind of message out of law enforcement. But as long as the top leaders of law enforcement continue to embrace this ridiculous idea that they can't influence what happens with those assault weapons and what happens when we put firearms indiscriminately out on the street, you're not going to get that kind of engagement. You will with me, because I stand with Moms Demand Action. Firmly. Yes.
So I have a question for you. I'm just going to assume you will be the next sheriff. And,
Thank you.
Because there should be justice in the world, and that would be the right justice. One thing I want to mention in jails is food.
Yes.
There have been, there's all kinds of people in jails with all kinds of dietary needs. And then there's, for instance, I think it's 85% of African Americans are lactose intolerant, you know, and there's all kinds of other things like that. And there have been studies that show that when you get the food right, the entire behavior of a population changes. It's almost miraculous, you know.
Yes.
And I know from people who've been incarcerated that food is a real issue for them when they are incarcerated. So could you address that a little bit?
I absolutely can. And you know, I started, some of you may remember, at the old workhouse, if any of you remember that. I walked in that old workhouse as a little 20-something-year-old in my little uniform, and man, what I learned inside those walls, right? But what I learned, and I will answer your question like this, the veteran supervisors and the mentors that I had during my career, one of the very first things I was taught is food is important here. It's super important. You don't mess with somebody getting lunch. You don't mess with their food. You give people things to eat that they can enjoy and eat well. And we had a dining room, for any of you that might historically want to know this, it was 10 times the size of this room. And what they would do is call out on the radio and say, we're feeding, right? I mean, that was the call. So when they did that, every officer knew to bring their prisoners out of their block and take them over to the dining hall, right? And it was a very, very important detail. I'm telling you, it was super important, and everybody knew it. Every available officer was then stationed along that dining hall while the prisoners ate, because we knew, and they knew, if there's one thing that will spark a riot or a disturbance, it will be your food. If it's not good and the prisoners can't eat it and they don't like it, I'll never forget the time, it was Christmas Day, and they darn near had a riot down there because they served raw chicken. The chicken wasn't done. And that's hundreds of people experiencing that at the same time. So I absolutely know food's important. Right now, to address your question, we are serving a cold dinner down at the Justice Center. The cold dinner is bologna sandwich, a piece of fruit, I think you get some like applesauce and some juice. And these are grown men that we're serving that to. Grown men and women. And if there's one complaint I hear, because prisoners know me and I know them. I mean, I spent years in the system, and they stop me on the street. Oh my God, I'm voting for you and I want that food changed. So you're exactly right. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to change that food. And I agree with you. And why don't we do some things that are a little outside the box? Like, let's create a pod and see what happens when we serve vegetables. Let's see what happens when we serve things that are very tasty, but yet not some greasy burger, right? And you must be a communist. Yeah. So, you know, nothing's off the table, and your question, I can't tell you how much on the mark that is. It's a super exact question that someone would ask. Yeah. Anybody else? Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, after I had the pleasure of first hearing you, I went to Kroger's and engaged with a young African-American policeman and sort of testing out my previous experience talking to policemen, that they have the lowest possible view of human nature. And I was really saddened. This guy was saying, you see these people here, I mean, it's a predominantly African-American clientele on Mitchell Avenue. He said, they're all thieves, they're lazy, they don't want to do anything. I mean, it was like some Trumpian tirade. And the reason I raise this is, changing the culture of the police so they actually have some belief that human beings are capable of meaningful change.
Right.
Because I understand their firsthand experience is people beating their wives and doing all sorts of horrible things. So it's understandable they have such a low view of human nature. At the same time, it seems to me you have to have some faith in the capacity to change, and a lot of the things you mentioned are a clear demonstration that people do respond to positive opportunities.
Right.
So you mentioned an earlier thing, the main recruitment has been from the Army, and
Yes,
I think that's
from the
something I would
military.
love to see you change.
Yes, thank you. Yes, our staffing model needs to change. I've known that for many years. When we are simply hiring people straight out of the military who really don't want to be there. That's the main fact. They're good guys. They're good people. They just don't want to be there. They don't want to do that job. They're waiting to go to road patrol. That's what they're waiting for. We need to hire people who want to do that job. And I'll tell you, there are, it's unfortunate that you encountered that officer. I know officers who, I tell you, there was an officer, Miss Parker, and she was stopped one day by one of the homeless women who comes into our jail quite frequently. And so she tells me this story. She says, and then Sharon comes up to her and says, hey, and she says, Sharon, listen, man, I'm kind of busy, and I here's a couple dollars. Here's a couple dollars. Go on, I'll talk to you later. And Sharon said to her, Miss Parker, I don't want your money. I want you to come have a cup of coffee with me. I want somebody to talk to. And when Miss Parker told me that, she stopped right then and went and had a cup of coffee with Sharon. And those are the kinds of people that are wearing the uniform too. So, you're right though. We gotta bump it up. We have to do better. Yes. Yes, sir.
So it seems that throughout my lifetime, I've heard people talking over and over again about reducing recidivism.
Yes.
However, it also seems like the goal of incarceration in this country isn't reducing recidivism. It's not in rehabilitation. It's in punishment. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can. And the first words out of my mouth are going to be Judge Tracy Hunter. And I'll tell you why. That is over punishment, in my opinion. I don't care if it costs me votes, I'm going to say it. It's over punishment. Jail was designed in part to keep dangerous people away from society, people who they will hurt, right? We are protecting society by incarcerating people. When we incarcerate people who are not dangerous, who have already paid price, who have, who are doing nothing but following the rules, we have done a huge injustice. Regardless of where you stand on that issue, this is what I tell people. Come and spend a day in jail. If you don't think that that's over punishment, I challenge you to spend a day in jail. And I'll tell you what else is happening to her right now. She's in protective custody, which means what? She's isolated for 23 hours a day. Isolation, everybody. And that's not by her own accord. That's not because she's unruly. It's because of her status. So, there are things that happen in incarceration that drive people further into poverty, further into mental illness, and things like that. So, I'm just going to say we need to stop over punishing people. Believe me, if I took any one of you to jail for any minor thing you might have done, after a day, you would tell me, I learned my lesson. Let me out, right? So I can just put it to you that way. So thank you for that question. It's very relevant.
A follow-up on the mention that so many people are coming from the military into police work.
Yes.
When we see a lot of officer shootings and things like that.
Right.
It always seems to me that the training is kind of paramilitary.
It is paramilitary. Absolutely.
It's not so much about protect and serve. And it's upsetting because you're trying to go for your gun, you're trying to use it in the center of the chest, and people, sometimes you find out somebody had 70 rounds emptied into them, you know, for no reason at all. Can you address training?
Training has several different facets, and a big part of it is paramilitary whenever you're talking about weapons. It has to be, because we have to train with those weapons. Training with weapons is not an easy matter. Nobody takes it with a grain of salt in our business. Everybody knows how important weapons training is. What we do then to effectively train your force is we layer on that de-escalation training, we layer interpersonal communication skills training, mental health training, and things that can span your skill set. You know, when you only have a hammer, everything's a nail, right? So, you know, that training does happen, and I respect that training. I'm very well trained in firearms. I'm a self-defense instructor, in fact, and have been for 20 years. And I enjoy it. I enjoy teaching it. I've trained many officers. And it's serious business, you guys. I do want to say this for law enforcement. Man, it's a tough job. And I know officers, police officers, by the way, are at a very high risk for post-traumatic stress syndrome. They don't talk about it. We don't recognize it because they've got to be the tough guy, right? But post-traumatic stress happens a lot to police officers, and they just keep going. And there are so many good guys and women out there. I'm telling you, I know them personally. You do have your, I mean, how thousands and thousands of people wearing a uniform, you're going to find somebody who doesn't do the right thing, you know? But yes, I think expanding the training and making sure that we balance it is a very key.
Well, when you say do the right thing, sometimes you'll see in court cases that somebody is defended for having done the right thing. This is entirely justifiable shooting. And yet it doesn't seem justifiable. But it's justifiable by the training, but it doesn't seem justifiable in terms of real life.
I understand, sure. And that's where, you know, I don't have the answer to every question, all right? I don't. I can tell you that we base our policy and procedures on what we can foresee, what we think might happen, ways that officers should react, right? But you cannot predict every situation. You just can't. I learned that years ago when I was teaching self-defense. You can never recreate what just happened to an officer. You can't. You know why? Because you can't recreate the weather that day. You can't recreate the lighting. You can't recreate the person's expression. You know, all of those things are now gone to that situation, and they live here in the officer's experience. So, you know, I will say that it is something that's important for us to work on, certainly to know, but it is going to be something there's no magic answer to that. There just isn't. But I appreciate the question. Anything else? Yes.
At some kind of a meeting I was at, we talked about cash bail. And
yes.
Then I tried to explain it to somebody, and it was kind of muddled in my mind. Could you go over that?
Sure. Yeah. So what the city did, PG Sittenfeld passed a initiative to do away with cash bail, cash bond for people that are coming to jail that have non-violent crimes that are not against a person, right? And so when those people come to jail and they've been charged with a city ordinance, okay, some kind of city statute, those people can get out of jail without having to post $100 or $50 or any amount of bail. Now, that initiative does not apply to Hamilton County, okay? So Hamilton County does not have to enforce that unless, of course, we get some collaboration from the prosecutor's office and so on and so forth. So in Hamilton County at large, we still have a form of cash bail. And if I could just tell you this quick story as an example of how cash bail can just hammer a person. So when I was out there, I was in a patrol car with my partner, and we were doing electronic monitoring, so we were monitoring people with ankle bracelets and so forth. And we went into this house, and we were there for a guy that lived in the house, and there were several people that lived in the house, and there was a woman that lived in the house. We weren't there for that woman. This house, by the way, when we walked up, did not have a front door. There is no front door on this house, okay? This is wintertime. There's no front door on the house. So we walk into the house, and through our situation, my partner discovers that this woman has this much marijuana in her pocket in an envelope, all right? It was about this much. It was all folded in an envelope. And what do? Now, this is years ago, okay? We did not have the decriminalization of marijuana. So what do? Write her a ticket, all right? It's a marijuana ticket. A marijuana ticket is $100 and something. Now, this woman lives in a house with no door. Do you think she's going to be able to pay that ticket? No. So what's going to happen? There's going to be a warrant issued for her arrest. She's going to be arrested on that warrant sometime, right? And she's going to go to jail. Now, if her bond is $50, is she going to be able to pay that bond to get out of jail? I mean, I'd be able to afford it, right? I could pay $50 and get myself out of jail. She's going to sit in jail for maybe 2 weeks. Almost 2 weeks while that runs through the courts, right? To get her to a person who can say with common sense, and they will, oh my goodness, yeah, you're out, you're done, right? But in the meantime, because we have that cash bail, we've just pushed her further into poverty, is what we've done. And, I'm not on my soapbox about decriminalizing marijuana or anything. This is an example of how cash bail can hurt someone who really is not a danger to society. So that's my explanation of that, my story there, if you would. Yes.
I hear about racial discord within the police force. Is that being addressed, and also bias training to help police officers understand their implicit bias? How much is that being addressed?
I can tell you that Cincinnati PD has wraparound training around implicit bias. I'm not on Cincinnati PD. I know some of the officers. I follow what's happening there, and I know that Cincinnati PD embraces that training. The Sheriff's Department needs to embrace that training as well. When I'm sheriff, we will, but as I know it right now, we have not had that training. We do have cultural diversity training, that's what it's called, and we do train that with our officers. But in this day and age, with what's going on nationally, we need that training, and we need a lot of it, because it's, as you guys know, it's dividing people.
What about within the police force itself? Is there a lot of division that's racially?
Like black officers versus white officers, they have different approach and opinion, and they are is that causing division within the force itself?
I will tell you, if you've been following the news, Cincinnati is struggling with that right now. If you're following them, and all I know is what's in the newspaper. I don't know those officers personally, but I can tell you for our department, we don't have a lot of racial discord in our department. Do I think there is some? Yes, I do. We have very few minorities, by the way, in our department. Very few. There's very few women. There are very few African Americans. Very, very few. And particularly when you start getting up to the supervisory ranks, there are, you can't find women with a flashlight up there, I mean, it's just, where are they? So we have a lot of, we don't have a lot, but we don't have a lot of minorities.
Shall we hear it for Charmaine McGuffy?
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Two things as we're closing. I have the sign up for lunches from Venice on Vine. Carol will have it back here in the back. You'll sign up, and then that will be ordered for you next week. The second thing, the donation basket is on the table. We expect to have $2 to $3 from each and every person here in the donation basket to be able to pay for the rental of this room. It is very important that everyone understands that this is not a benevolence or anything. This is to pay our rent. Okay? So please pull out the dollars and put it in the basket. Appreciate it.
Otherwise, we're homeless.
I have just a few examples of a donation envelope for Charmaine, but I'll put one on each table. You could write down the address. It's a worthy cause.
Okay, for next week, for August 20th, Watson Bike Trail Development Public Input. So if you're all interested in bicycles, or even if you're not interested in bicycles and you know how that kind of thing is decided, come next week.
Just remember.
Watson Bike Trail.
They're up there. I realized that extra battery.
Right. Well, I didn't realize they use a recharger and they use rechargeable batteries. So we said these came fresh off the
Economic
truck.
development along the bike path.
So I don't want to mess up their system.
They want community input. You are the community, folks. We need you. And the week after that is how to be a delegate to the Democratic National Convention.
She's right
That's
here.
going to be interesting.
Right
Oh,
here.
she's here?
Right here.
Oh, there she is. There you go, Susan. Thank you so much. How to be a delegate. Okay, and after that, we're going to start some of our municipal court judges, and beyond that, we're starting to have candidates for the coming election. So come on back. You are a wonderful audience. Great questions, folks. Sign up for lunch. Have a good week. Have a good, wonderful time. This is wonderful.